Before almost every major recession in the last 50 years, one signal started flashing months in advance. It wasn't the stock market. It wasn't unemployment. It was oil. And that signal is flashing again, right now. 6 times in the last 50 years, oil prices suddenly jumped more than 30%, and each time, the economy cracked soon after. Oil has already surged more than 50% in 2026. The stock market is near all-time highs. Most people haven't noticed, but the warning signal that preceded every major downturn in modern American history is active again. And this time, there is a critical problem. The financial cushion that protected American families during the last oil shock is gone. Today, I'm going to show you why oil shocks damage the economy, why this one could be more dangerous than the last, and the 5 specific things Marcus should do before the damage arrives. Marcus fills up his car on Tuesday morning. He pays more than last month, shakes his head, drives to work, and thinks that's the end of the oil story. It's not even close to the beginning. Oil is not just the price of gasoline. Oil is the foundation price of the entire economy. Diesel powers the trucks delivering Marcus's groceries. Natural gas produces the fertilizer that grows his food. Energy runs every factory, warehouse, cargo ship, and airplane between the farm and his plate. When oil becomes expensive, everything built on top of it becomes expensive too. Food, shipping, manufacturing, travel. But here is the detail most financial coverage completely misses. The damage from an oil shock doesn't arrive immediately. It arrives about 12 months later. Economists have tracked this pattern for decades. Oil surged in 1973. A recession followed in 1974. Oil spiked during the 1990 Gulf War. A recession followed in 1991. Oil hit $148 in 2008. The financial crisis erupted months later. The pattern is always the same. Oil spike first, economic damage second, roughly 1 year apart. Oil jumped in early 2026, which means the impact may land in late 2026 and into 2027. Marcus is living inside that window right now, and so is everyone watching this. The reason this particular shock happened and why it is not resolving quickly traces back to one narrow stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Every single day, roughly 20% of the world's entire oil supply moves through that corridor, 1/5 of global energy through a channel narrower than many American cities. In 2026, military tensions disrupted shipping through the region. Tankers rerouted thousands of miles around Africa. Delivery times exploded. Costs surged. And here is the point most people miss entirely. Oil is priced globally. When prices spike in the Persian Gulf, they spike in Houston. When they spike in Houston, they spike at the gas station at the end of Marcus's street. It does not matter that the United States produces millions of barrels domestically. When the global price moves, everyone pays the global price. Oil is already up more than 50% this year. Every historical oil shock that triggered a recession began with a price jump of 30% or more. We are already past that threshold. Now here is the question the stock market seems to be asking. We had an oil shock in 2022. Russia invaded Ukraine, oil surged, no recession followed. So why should Marcus worry about this one? The answer is one word: savings. In 2022, American households had an unusually large financial buffer. Pandemic stimulus had pushed personal savings to record highs. When fuel prices jumped, families dipped into those savings, absorbed the hit, and kept spending. The economy held. Today, that picture looks completely different. Personal savings rates have collapsed back toward historic lows. The cushion is gone. At the same time, interest rates remain elevated and household debt has increased significantly since 2022. This oil shock is hitting a Marcus who is already stretched, not the Marcus of 2022 who had savings to spare. Same type of shock, completely different starting conditions. That is why the recession risk over the next 12 months is meaningfully higher than it was 4 years ago. Economic shocks rarely arrive as one giant bill. They arrive as dozens of small increases across every corner of your life. Here's what that looks like for Marcus specifically. Gas. Marcus drives 15,000 miles a year at 30 miles per gallon. That's 500 gallons. At $3.50 per gallon, his annual fuel cost is $1,750. If oil stays elevated and gas moves towards $5, which is what a 50% oil spike historically produces, that same driving costs $2,500. That's $750 gone, just to get to work. Not a choice Marcus made, just a cost that arrived. Groceries. Marcus spends about $600 a month on food. Studies show when oil rises from $70 to $100, grocery bills typically increase 8 to 12%. A 10% increase is $60 more every month, $720 per year. Nothing dramatic in 1 week, just the number on the receipt creeping higher quietly every single time Marcus shops. Mortgage rates. Here is the mechanism most people miss entirely. When oil spikes and inflation rises, the Federal Reserve faces a brutal choice: cut interest rates to support the economy, which borrowers desperately need, or hold rates high to fight inflation. An oil-driven inflation surge forces their hand towards holding. If the Fed stops cutting, the 30-year mortgage rate stays above 6.5% or climbs higher. Every quarter point increase adds roughly $60 a month to a $400,000 mortgage. That's $720 per year. For Marcus and anyone waiting for rates to fall before buying a home, that window closes fast when oil stays elevated. 401k. Most retirement accounts are heavily concentrated in technology stocks. Higher inflation, frozen interest rates, and slowing economic growth all compress tech valuations. Oil shocks quietly damage retirement accounts long before most people think to check their balance. By the time it's obvious, some of the damage is already done. The correct response is not panic, it's preparation. 5 specific steps Marcus takes right now. Step 1. Fill up today and keep it full. When you have high confidence that a specific cost is rising, act on that information before it rises. Fuel is the most obvious example. This is not hoarding, it's basic economic planning. Step 2. Move large purchases forward. Appliances, furniture, electronics, anything that involves shipping. Retailers reprice within 60 to 90 days after transportation costs increase. The price Marcus sees today on that refrigerator or couch includes current diesel costs. That price changes. Buying before the reprice is not complicated, it's just timing. Step 3. Review investment exposure this weekend. Not panic selling, balance checking. If Marcus's entire retirement account is heavily concentrated in technology stocks with zero energy or defense exposure, he should ask whether that allocation makes sense right now. A small position in an energy ETF doesn't require predicting the outcome. It just means being protected if the worst materializes. Step 4. Do not bet a housing decision on rate cuts arriving on schedule. Marcus should model 2 scenarios: rates fall in 6 months, or rates stay elevated for 18 months. The right housing decision works under both outcomes. Do not let one assumption drive that large a decision. Step 5. Reinforce the cash buffer. 3 to 6 months of expenses in accessible savings, not invested in stocks, not sitting in a checking account earning nothing, just liquid stability. During economic downturns, the people with cash buy quality assets at lower prices. The people without cash are forced to sell them there. Here is the honest bottom line. I'm not predicting a recession. The most likely outcome is that this oil shock eventually fades. The conflict stabilizes, energy prices fall, the economy absorbs the impact. That's still the base case, but the pattern that preceded every major recession in the past 50 years is active right now, and the financial buffer that protected households last time is gone. Marcus can't control global oil markets. He can't control what happens in the Strait of Hormuz. He can't control what the Federal Reserve decides. But he can fill his tank today. He can review his investments this weekend. He can make sure he has enough savings to stay standing, regardless of what the next 12 months deliver. Because throughout financial history, the people who suffered most during economic shocks were rarely the ones who prepared and were wrong. They were the ones who saw the warning signs and waited for certainty before acting.